Hello there everyone. Today I want to show you how to make these adjustable wirework crown rings. And these are the two that I've made here. So the exact same ring, just two different versions of the materials. So they look like that, and then they'll look like this on. So that's wearing it one way, with the point going outward, or the other way. You can wear it completely how you want to. I personally prefer it this way here. I think it sits a little nicer, but like I said, it's completely up to you. And then obviously the silver version, where I just use the copper beads. And then nice and adjustable in an easy and comfortable way to wear as well. So it'll fit different sizes. So if you want to learn how to make this crown ring here, then keep watching. So these are the materials that we're going to need. First of all, we need our wire here. Now I have 3 different gauges. These are all regular round copper wire that I'm using. The first one here is a 1mm. This is going to be the base wire, so it'll also be the kind of strength of the piece and the ring shank. And then here I have a 0.4mm. This is going to be our weaving wire, so again kind of weave the ring shank and also kind of hold the piece together. And finally here I have a 0.25mm, so the finest gauge. This really is just going to be used to add in the beads after we've made the basis of the ring. And then as for those beads that we need for the ring, what I have here is some really small ones. I have one 3mm round, so that's that one. It's going to be in the middle, and then I have two 2mm rounds. So I'm just using blue coated hematite gemstone beads for this, but obviously you can use whatever you want to. Metal spacer beads are also really nice. So let's get it all together and let's get started. So then we need to cut some lengths of all our wire here to be able to start making the ring. So what I have first of all is the length of our 1mm, so the base wire, and this is about 30 centimeters long. So it doesn't need to be that long because it is just a ring that we're making. And then we'll need 2 lengths here of a 0.4mm wire of about 60 centimeters each, and these are going to be the weaving wire mainly for the ring band. And then the final gauge of wire that we'll need here, a length of, is the 0.25, so this is the finest gauge, and we'll need about 30 centimeters of this because like I said, we just need this to add in the beads after, so therefore it doesn't need to be that long. So then the first length of wire that we want to start working with is the 1mm gauge, so that's this one here, the one we just have the one of. And then I want to just get a little shape into this first, so I'm going to start from roughly the middle of the wire. I'm going to get a pair of flat nose pliers or chain nose, put them onto there. Like I said, roughly about the middle, because we're going to start the shape from the middle and then work kind of out towards the sides. And then I just want to bend one side against the pliers here, get a bit of an angle in there, just until you're kind of happy with how it might look. Get a nice angle, and then you can always sharpen it up by going from one side of the angle, kind of squeezing down, and then going to the other side and squeezing down, and that sharpens it up a bit. And then just kind of, like I said, adjust it until you're happy with the angle of it. So it's maybe roughly about 90 degrees or so, just roughly. Then we need to curve the sides here a little bit. So this is roughly the midpoint. So I'm just going to start curving them a little bit, kind of downwards here without it being too much. And obviously do both sides and try and get them as even as possible. And this is also then just imagining what it might look like on the ring as we're shaping this. So what you can do as well is take it to your finger or ring mandrel or what you're going to use, and just see how it might sit on there. And then when you're happy with it, then obviously we have the shape in place. So just curve them here a little bit to roughly both sides are symmetrical as they can be. So just something like that. So then I'm going to get in my ring mandrel here because we now need to start shaping the ring. So you can also use, say, a marker or something else that's the size and the shape you want it to be, roughly, if you don't have a ring mandrel. But like I said, I'm going to be using this. So I want to get to roughly the size that I want it to be. Obviously this is an adjustable ring, so that is not too crucial to get it the exact size, but I still prefer to try and get it around the size, so you don't have to adjust it too much, and it still fits nicely. So I'm going to take the middle part there, where we put the angle in, and place it on about the size that I want it to be. And then I put my thumb on top of that angle, just like that, hold it there, and then I want the tails here, one on each side, to come around the ring mandrel. So all the way around the back, And the same with the other side. So all the way there, and you can see we have this nice shape in the front. And then basically we'll have, let me look from the front, kind of like a full circle around the ring mandrel. So we have that shape in place now. So now I need to start making what you could also say is the adjustable part. And for that, I'm going to get out some pliers, either some chain nose or flat nose, either will work. And then we'll need to look on the back here where the wires, or the tails are overlapping. And we then want to place our wires. So we want to find roughly about the middle. So look straight across from where we put in the angle. Use that as kind of a guide or a reference. Just going to start with a wire that's kind of crossed on top of the other one. So just place your pliers. You don't obviously want the ends to be right next to each other or overlapping or anything. You want just a bit of a space between the ends there of the ring that's going to be the adjustable part. So just judge that, looking straight across there. Find roughly where the middle is and then go a bit to the side of the middle. And then I take the tail that I'm holding on to with the pliers and I want to bend this over the top of itself, so over the top of the pliers. That's where I want the tail to go around. And just get it all the way close against the pliers here and back on itself, you could say. So like that, and then we have a little opening like that where we bent the wire. And then what I want to do is just kind of squeeze this close a little bit. So we want a gap between, we don't want to squeeze it so the tails there lie right close to each other. We want it just a little bit closer than this. So just where you have enough of a gap so you can then start weaving, get your weaving wire in there. Something like that. So that's the one side. Then I need to do the other side as well. So just kind of judge this by eye. Place your plier on that length of wire. Again, roughly where the middle is, and then the equivalent to the other side is what we just did on there. Again, using that angle, the midpoint on the other side, is a good reference to hold it against. And then, once you feel like you have it, you take your wire over the top of the plier and then out to the other side, so back on itself. Something like that. Then also this one, we also just want to squeeze a bit tighter. So there's still enough of a gap, like I said, to weave in. So we can fit the weaving wire with the weave we're going to do, but it's not too open either. So just something roughly like that. So there we basically have this shape in place and also the adjustable part. So now we need to go back to the ring mandrel. So we then take the ring mandrel here again, mainly just to make sure it keeps its shape, while we then obviously shape the tails in place, so the whole thing doesn't lose too much of its shape. So again, place it roughly where you had it before. Then I'm just going to do one side at a time. I'm going to hold my thumb on top of the edge there, the end of it. Then I'm going to bring this back across the side. And I want to make sure it lays next to the other wire so it follows the shape of the other wire. Pretty close, but still having that kind of gap, enough of a gap for the weaving wire to sit in between it. So just over the side there towards the front. You don't have to go all the way down to the front yet. And the same with the other side. Just keep it in place on there with your finger. And then just follow the previous shape that we already made around the side. So roughly something like that. And then we have this in place. So now we have the tails coming back out towards the front. So now what we want to start doing is actually some weaving. It's also going to then help hold the shape, and then until we can move on to the next step. So I'm just going to take one of my lengths of 0.4mm wire that we cut off first, because we're just going to start on one side at a time. So I'm going to start right from the end and start doing my weave across the side, and then we need to start and do the same thing on the other side. So kind of moving from the ends there in towards the middle at the same time. So I just need to get this first of all attached to it. So like I said, just start on one side, doesn't matter which one. Have a little tail there to hold on to. Then we just want to attach it first of all. So I'm going to attach it to the very end of where the wire there is kind of pushed over itself, so with the adjustable part. So just wrap it around the base wire there about twice or so, right on the end. Make sure your wraps and your coils are nice and tight so it stays secure as well. The first part here can be a little bit fiddly because it's kind of moving all over the place, but just take your time, get your wire attached, and I just want to make sure to push the wraps of the coils out further towards the end, like I just said, because then what we're going to do is start the weave itself. So just get it right in the end. You can push like one wrap at a time, that really helps it. And then I'm just going to use a tiny little tail there to help hold on to as well. So I have this, and then I'm going to start using my longer end. I want to then go down. Obviously we have the shape, try and make sure to hold the shape in place. So be careful with your wrapping, don't kind of pull too tight or anything. I'm going to go in between the two wires there. So just look at these two as two base wires lying next to each other. And then kind of ignore the rest, except obviously be careful with it. Pull it all the way through, push it down, and then I'm going to start the weave. So I'm going to be doing the diagonal weave around the sides here. I think that's a really nice weave for ring bands. So I've just done the one wrap there. Then I need to come across the top of both of them and then down. But what we need to do is come up between the two wires, and because we have the shape here, it's a little bit tricky. So you can either go down and then put the wire back through the wires, or you can follow kind of the shape of where your wires are. So what I'm going to do is actually bring it underneath this one, because that's the top one, and then bring it in between the two tails that are crossing over each other there, like that on the front, and then underneath the other tail, because that actually brings it then in between those two wires that I want to get my weaving wire in between, and push it down. So either way that works best for you, it doesn't matter as long as you get your wire in there. And then around the top wire on its own, so around the top of that, and then just down through the ring, so the middle of it there, pull it all the way through. And make sure your wraps are always pushed nice and close together. So that's basically the weave. And now to start the next section of the same weave again, go over the cross of the top of the bottom of the base wires. That means going in between the two base wires and pulling your wire through and push it down. That's wrapping around the bottom base wire on its own. Make sure to push down your wraps nice and close. Then go across the top of both of them, and then either put your wire through and come back out between, or like I did before, go underneath the long tail, the top tail, like that, to then go in between the two tails and go underneath then the next one. That brings it out between the two wires in the ring band. And then around the top one on its own, so again just around the top of that and down through the ring frame, the whole thing. Just like that. And push it close. And that's basically the weave. So just do this, obviously gently try and keep the shape of the ring. And you want to do this around the side, so we don't want to do this all the way around to the front. We want to get to the point basically where the front starts to curve downwards a bit. And you want to do the exact same thing on the other side. So once you reach to that point here, start on the other side, right at the end, work your way around the side and get to the same place. So we then have that space in the middle also to add the extra little kind of curves, and then also we're going to add the beads. So I then weaved on both sides here, so starting from the adjustable point all the way up the sides, and I've made sure that the weave finishes about the same place on both sides. So when you're just kind of comparing to each other, just make sure that it's pretty symmetrical on both sides there, because that's obviously otherwise going to affect the front of it. So now we're in this place. Can't really weave anymore until we then start doing our loops. So that's what we're going to use the tails of the base wires for now. Now this part can also be a bit fiddly or a bit tricky because it is a thick wire that we're using, but just take your time, and also if the ring goes a little bit out of shape, same as maybe while you were weaving, don't worry too much about it. Just try and hold it as much in shape as you can and otherwise we can always bring back the ring mandrel either during it or afterwards and just reshape it into the proper shape that we want it to have. So just don't worry too much about it. But then what we need to do now is make those loops at the front. So we're going to do the same on both sides here, but just kind of do one side at a time. So I'm just going to start with the side where the wire there lays on top, just so it's a bit easier. And then you can either use pliers to help get the shape and size that you want, or you can do it freehand. It's completely up to you and what you feel most comfortable with. I'm going to take this, start getting a curve into it, and we need to move it back towards the top of the ring, so away from the angle side, and then get it back around itself all the way. You can just turn it how it's comfortable. And now the first little loop here I want quite small. Just get it all the way around here, shaping it into the right size and shape that we want. You can just move the other one a little bit out of the way. And getting back around, and then we want this tail to cross on top, or basically the front of the ring there. So we just want to make sure to do that. Bring it all the way around, back towards the bottom, basically where it started out from. And then just get it the size and the shape really that you want it to have. And then when you're happy with that, we just want this wire to come back out basically the exact same way that it did before. So as if it was just continuing out from where it comes out from the weave. So just work with this for a little bit until you're happy with the size and the shape, and your wire comes straight back out again. And I've just then put the tail underneath the one on the other side because we want to do that next, just so it's a bit easier. So do that, get happy with that, do the same one on the other side. And obviously then compare that one with the first one, try and get them as symmetrical as possible again, the size and the shape. And then we have those two, one on each side, that's the first loop, so the small loops there in place. And then we can weave a little bit further. So now that I have both my loops in place there, one on each side, and I have them as symmetrical and even as possible, then what we need to do is just weave a bit further on both sides again, so the same thing. So I'm just going to start on this side here, and what I just want to do is basically weave around the bottom wire, the one that has the shape on the ring there, so it goes into the point, just around that to get underneath the little loop there. So I'm just going to weave around, and you obviously just have to kind of maneuver your wire around all the other base wires, almost a bit like a labyrinth you could say, to get them in the right place there. You could obviously also go to the end of your weaving wire and put it through the place where it needs to go, like that, and then pull it all the way through. Just don't get caught in anything there. And then get it through to the right place that way. Completely up to you how you prefer to do it. Or you can maneuver it around. So basically what we need to do is just coil a couple of times here around that bottom base wire, just till we get to the other side of the loop, and then we can start weaving on both wires again so we can reattach them together basically. So this is the third one. I'm just going to do one more, and then that should be fine. So I've ended up with 4 in total here. And then what I want to do is then go to the other wire, like I said, and connect them. But I just want to use a bit of a different weave than I used on the edge. And what that is I want to use the figure of 8 weave more here, just because it's going to blend in a bit better, I think. So instead of coming down to the bottom one again, I'm going to go around the back and then around behind the top wire that we're going to now wrap around and incorporate that, and then just around that single wire by itself twice. So that was once, then once more around it, and push them nice and close together. And then now I need to go down through the ring again to get behind the bottom wire. So just like that. So it's basically just a figure of 8 weave between the 2 base wires. We're just maneuvering our weaving wire around the other wires because obviously they're kind of in the way. So around the bottom one. So I'm just going to do this about 1 or 2 times more. So basically that's going to be the space in between this little loop and then the next one. So just get to that point where you feel the next loop is going to fit in nicely. So what I then ended up with here is going across from the bottom to the top, down to the bottom to the top, and to the bottom again. So I basically wrapped around the top wire there, just 2 little sections, so twice gone on top of that. And obviously I've done the exact same thing on the other side with the same amount just to keep it symmetrical. So I now know that I'm at the point where I need to start making the next loop on both sides. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'm just going to show you here on one, and it's the same thing again. You want to get them as symmetrical as possible. So I'm just going to start with the one that's on top. Same principle, we start out kind of getting a curve into our wire and looping it back over the top, so away from the point, the angle in the middle there, and then gradually getting it further and further towards itself, so back around on itself. And then this loop here we want to be a bigger one, but we also want to just keep in mind where the other one's going to be on the other side. So basically we don't want to go any further with the sides of this than it reaches about the midpoint, because we need to have space on the other side for the other one. So just gradually get it in place here. Move your ring around if you need to. Help get it from different angles. Make it easier. And get it all the way. Bring it back down to the beginning of itself. Just check from the front here. It's pretty good towards the middle. Just want to make it a bit smaller there. So I'm just going to be using some chain nose here. I'm not grabbing really tight because that'll kind of straighten out a part of the wire. I'm just gently grabbing and just helping move it a little bit. And then obviously we want the tail here again to be going down basically where it was coming from originally anyway, and in the same direction. So out towards the tip again. And then you want to decide on the size as well, because I want the 2 middle ones here, so the one we're making now and the one on the other side, I want them to be larger than the first ones that were made. So just kind of get yours in place. You can adjust it a bit until you're completely happy. And also, like I said before, you can always just use pliers to help shape it in the first place. So whether it's round nose pliers or bail making pliers. So do that, and then we want to do the same thing on the other side. So we kind of almost going to end up looking a bit like a hat shape in the middle. But get them as symmetrical as possible again. So here I've then done both sides, and you can see again we still have the tails that's lapping over each other. But before we cut anything off, I just want to get further down with the weaving, just to make sure we don't cut off too much. So what I'm going to do is just go back to one side. I'm going to go back to the one first of all that's wrapping across, that's going across there below the other one. And first of all, we just want to get below the loop, just like we did with the small one. Now, because I haven't got much space to work with here, I'm just going to be going using the end of my wire, weaving wire, poke that through to be able to then wrap around. For now, just the base wire, still the bottom one. Like I said, just to get to the other side of the loop where we can then incorporate the top one again, the one that created the loop, and connect them two together again to make it more of a whole piece. So something like that, maybe just one more. So just poke it through, pull it all the way, and then wrap it, tighten it up. And then again I just want to do the figure of 8 weave just like I did just in between those 2 loops. So I'm going to go to the top one, so all I'm going to do is kind of push it back and go through the ring, you could say. Push it through the ring, and then just in between there, the 2 loops in the middle, and then around the top wire there, which is coming out here. And again just poking through and then wrapping that around twice as well, like we did before. That's the figure of 8 weave. So that was once, through the ring again, up to the top, bring it around and then poke it through again, which is then in between the 2 base wires that we're wrapping around. And pull it all the way through. Make sure you don't get any kinks. And push, always push your wraps then nice and close together. And then I'm back to the bottom wire again. So just swapping from the bottom to the top one, wrapping around twice every time. And what I'm going to do basically is wrap this pretty much almost all the way down to the point. So get as far down to the point as you can, and then what we need to do is actually cut off this wire here so we can get it proper in place and then also do the other side. Now reach all the way down to the tip here then with the weaving wire. So these two, the tail and the frame there of the point, they're now connected as well. So nice and fastened together. And I've run out of space because I've reached the point with the weaving wire. And obviously we don't want to weave up the other side because we need to go down the same way that we just did here. But then what we need to do before we do that, to be able to get space for that, is just to get rid of the excess of this base wire here that we've just been weaving around. And what we want to do is cut this off right close to where the frame on the underside is, so where the point is. But we want to do it so when we've cut it off, the end of the wire that's going to be left, we're going to push it in and the end is going to tuck up against the inside of the point there. So, and rather cut off too little than too much, because you can always cut off extra to get it further down, but you can't obviously add any more in. So I'm going to get as close as I can with my flush cutters and then go in, just grab the right place here to make sure I'm just cutting off that wire like that, and then just see if it fits. So what I'm going to do is try and push this down, and if I can it'll fit. If not, then I might just have to cut off a bit more, which looks like I'll just have to cut just a tiny bit more off. Like I said, rather do that and then do it gradually like that until you then hit just the right point. It's going to fit perfectly. Just a little bit more actually. So it can be a little bit tricky to get your pliers in there, but if you need to just kind of push this a little bit out of the way just to get the space. So get your pliers in there, maneuver them in, cut off the excess, and then push, try and push on that front side right where the curve is to see if the wire will go in. And this does now, so this fits just perfectly. Then push it inwards there, so it's more these two wires that we've been wrapping together going to lie flat kind of on top of each other, you could say, or next to each other, but just so the top wire there doesn't kind of stick out at the front. So there, now we have that in place. Once we're then happy with that, then you'll also have more space for this other one that we then need to weave now. It'll come more down into the right position. And then all you want to do is go back here where we started out, to then start going underneath the loop first of all, and then just weave the exact same way as we did on this side until you reach the point down here where you haven't got any more space left. And then what we need to do is cut this off, the excess as well, the exact same way. This will just be butting up against the other wire you just cut down, because it won't be able to go all the way down into the corner. So just do that, and then obviously we're going to have the weaving wires left that we then also need to get rid of. So now I got rid of the two base wires there, so the tails, and we have that nice almost heart shape at the front. Then we just need to get rid of the weaving wire as well, when we got all the way, both of them all the way down to the point really. So what I'm going to do is they're kind of just wrapping around, and you just want to wrap it around one more time as if you were going to wrap it around fully, but except if you can't get through because obviously you run out of space, I'm going to wrap it around to the point where when I cut it off here, this is just the one of them, the end that's going to be left is going to then, by using chain nose pliers here, I'm just going to press it down and then roll it a little bit in the direction that the wire is wrapping around the base wire. And that kind of tucks it in, and it's going to end up going in between the two base wires by doing that, and that tucks it away and gets rid of it so it doesn't catch or scratch on anything. And you just want to do the same thing with the other one as well. That one goes towards the back. Push it around and then cut it off so the end you have left is just enough to then press it down and then roll it in the direction that it's going. And then obviously make sure you run your finger over it, and then if you can't feel anything to catch or scratch, then it'll be fine to wear as well. So just make sure to get rid of the wires. And obviously we have the tails down here as well. You want to get rid of them, might as well do that now. Just want to do the same thing, just see where it's coming from, and then kind of wrap it around as if it was going to go one more time. Cut off the excess. And then tuck it in by pressing it down and just rolling it in the direction that it's going. So that way you just make sure that the end of the weaving wire gets tucked in between the base wires, because obviously it's a ring, you want to make sure it's nice and comfortable, you're not going to be able to feel it on the skin. So just finish off the other one as well. And then here at the front, just want to mention what can also help when you want to press the base wires down as you're cutting them off, is just use a pair of pliers to do that and just press them in so they're going to sit and stay in the shape that you want them to, just like that. And there we have the basic shape of the ring done. So all that's left to do now when you got rid of your weaving wire as well and your tails is just to add the final beads in. So this is then where we need to get the final length of our wire that we cut ready. So this is the 0.25 mil gauge, so the finest wire that we have, just a short length that we needed to use to add in the beads at the end. So first of all we need to attach this, and I'm just going to start on one side. We're going to start here and then work our way across while adding in the beads. So what you're going to find, it might be a little bit difficult to show, but right below the first little loop there, you have a little opening in between the two wires on the ring band, you could say, because of the loop. And what I want to do, because it's such a fine wire, we can get it up through there, through that little opening, like that. And then we just want to attach it right there. So I'm just leaving a little tail to hold on to, and then I'm going through the opening. So we're wrapping around, coiling around there, just to attach it, just a few times. So this is right below that first little loop, basically part of the ring band, you could say. Just go through it here a few times. So at least, ideally about 3 times, especially because it's such a fine wire. It just needs a little bit extra, 1 or 2 wraps, just to be extra secure and stay in place, obviously, when we then go back and cut it off as well, the ends. So I'm just going to go through one more time here. Just like that, so we coil them. And then we need to get in and wrapping across the loops here. So what we need to do is I need to go up through the first loop from below, because I kind of want to do it in a certain way to get the beads to sit just right. This is my personal preference. So I'm coming up through the loop. And then we just need to start coiling around the top of the loop until we get to the point here between the 2 loops. So all you want to do is keep going through the loop from the bottom here, all the way over to the other side, and make sure every time you do a wrap here or a coil that you get it through and then pull it all the way through, and then once you've done that, pull it tight and then push your wraps together so it becomes nice and tight all the way across. So this is when we're going to fit in the first bead, is when we're going to cross from the first loop over to the next one. That's where we're going to add the beads in. So just get to that point and I'll show you how to add the bead. So I then reach that point here where I'm going to cross kind of the midpoint of the top and then a little bit to the side, and then we just have enough space there in between those 2 loops where I'm then going to take my first 2mm round, so the very tiny one. That's the ones, because we have 2 of them, we want to add them on the side with the larger one in the middle. So I'm going to take my 2mm round, it's going to drop right there, you can see it's going to sit just there in between the 2. It's kind of bridging the gap. And then we need to move over to the next loop, and again, I'm coming from the top, so I need to go up through the bottom of that one, same as what we were just doing. I'm just going to hold the bead in place here while I pull this tight, and then make sure the bead stays right in that position in between the 2 loops. And then pull it nicely, so it's going to stay where we want it to sit. And then what we want to do is just keep coiling across the top of this loop here, without getting any kinks or anything. Again, coil them around, make sure you get them nice and tight together, until you just go across the midpoint of that till the other side there, where we're then going to add in the 3mm round in the middle. So I then reach that midpoint there, which is then where when I get my 3mm round, the same bead, obviously you don't have to do that, add that onto the wire, and then that's going to fill in that little gap just there, sit just in the middle on the top. And then we need to go to the other side and start wrapping onwards again. And then basically what we want to do now is everything mirrored. So I'm not going to keep going up from the bottom. In this case, because it's the midpoint, I actually want to go down through the next one from the top, just to get the beads to sit nicely and evenly across. Keep hold of the bead as I'm pulling this down, and then just force the bead to sit on top there. You might just have to maneuver it a little bit until it just ends up sitting right where we want it to, in that midpoint. And then obviously on this side as well, keep coiling, now just from the top. So now the next point we're going to reach is the one on this side where we're going to add the 2mm round, which is then the final bead. So just get there, so you can just breach that little gap there. So I then just need to grab my other 2mm round and add that onto the wire when I'm in the right place there. And then that's going to fit perfectly there. Just get it in the right place, bring your wire around, and then wrap right onto the next loop. And again, this one coming down from the top, because we're on the opposite side now than the beginning. Get it all the way through, and then just make sure the bead sits where you want it to before moving on, and then go through again. So once you do wrap the beads and you then keep wrapping across, the beads will stay in place nicely. Just like that. And then obviously you want to then coil all the way around the edge of here, just how we started out as well. And then on this side as well, you want to just get right in there, the same gap where we fastened the wire in the first place, finish it off as well there. Just wrap it around a few times, especially with this thin wire, just to make sure it stays in place. And that's basically all there is to adding in the beads. And obviously you just want to get rid of the tails. You just do that in the exact same way as I showed you the other times. So just where it's wrapping around, the very final little tail, cut it down to a short little end, and then just make sure to use your chain nose pliers just to flatten it down, and just roll it in and tuck it away so you can't feel it or anything. So just do that, and then you'll have your finished ring. So this is then what the final ring looks like here, just with these materials obviously. It'll look very different depending on what materials you use. And also, that's why I have the silver one, where I use the copper beads. I think that looks really nice. I do love mixing my metals. So you can see it's completely different looks. And it's completely up to you what you prefer. So, it's then nice and comfortable to wear. It's going to sit like this. Obviously you can wear it whatever direction you want to. Personally, I actually prefer it the other way, but that's complete personal preference. I just think that looks just a little bit more appealing, but it's completely up to you. And then obviously the silver one there. So that's what the rings look like. You have them nice and adjustable, comfortable to wear, and a nice little impact there on the front with the design, with a nice easy adjustable side as well. So I really hope you enjoyed this little ring tutorial here, and thank you very much for watching.